Merry meet everybody, it's Poe, your Friday hostess, and you're watching Witches of the Moon. This week on the channel we are talking about magical names and why we have them. There is a great chapter in Scott Cunningham's Living Wicca, a further guide for the solitary practitioner, that really sums up what I believe magical names are and what we use them for. So while you look at my Ostara altar, I'm going to have a little story time with you guys. I'm going to read a little bit out of the chapter. So it's chapter 4 and it's just named Magical Names. And it goes as follows. Many Wiccan books discuss the taking of a Wiccan or magical name. The ceremonial bestowing of such a name upon the initiate is a part of many initiation ceremonies. Afterward, the new Wiccan is usually exclusively called by this name within the circle. Magical names are quite popular among Wiccans, although, and this is just a side note, I think that this is not just a Wiccan practice, this is also just a general pagan practice. They're so popular, in fact, that many Wiccans have 2 or even 3 names. One is usually a public craft name used at Wiccan gatherings when writing articles and so on. A secret name, the one bestowed during initiation, and perhaps even a third name, which is used only when addressing the god and goddess, and is only known to them and the Wiccan that's performing, addressing their god and goddess. Wiccans who are members of more than one tradition may often have different names for each group or each tradition that they follow. For many, taking a new name is an outward symbol of his or her devotion to Wicca. It's seen as a part of the process of rebirth into the religion. And that's what I believe that magical names are. It's not necessary because it doesn't add any specific power. If you feel that your name, your birth name, is just fine, then that's just fine. But a lot of times taking on a magical name is used as a way of being reborn into the religion or path that you're following. Throughout history, names have been given considerable magical importance. A spirit's name has to be known before it can be exorcised from a sick person in ancient Sumer, Babylon, and Assyria. In Hawaii, babies are given revolting names in infancy to guard them from molestation of evil during their early vulnerable years. A more fitting name was given to the child when he or she reached a certain age and was less susceptible to the wiles of evil spirits. And in some cultures, mothers will bestow a secret name on their child. This real name, unknown to anybody but the mother, protects the child. So, names in the magical sense is given depending on what you follow, what tradition you follow, depending on what your specific beliefs are. They can hold some magical power, but it's only in the sense of like what you give it. It's only in a way that you think is suitable. So it just kind of depends on what your beliefs are and that sort of thing. Numerology is used to discover the power of our names, and many people change their names to advance in their careers. To cut to kind of the heart of the matter, he goes on to say, it's necessary for you to, is it necessary? No. He basically says that it's not necessary unless you kind of wish to have your magical purposes correspond to conventional Wicca or whatever path you follow as far as possible. So if it's a tradition that you're following and it's very traditional to take on a magical name, and you want to follow that to a T, then yeah, it's probably necessary for you if you're following it to the T. But if not, if you feel kind of, free form about it and it's not something that you feel you need to encompass in your magical workings, and it's really not necessary. So for a lot of people, the use of a magical name gives them a sense of power and mystery, which they otherwise don't feel they have with their born name. He goes on to say that basically we live in such a mundane world that it can be difficult to switch onto the magical side of our nature. And so for a lot of pagans and Wiccans, we use the magical name to assist in altering to the conscious mind and preparing for rituals. So using a magical name really, in essence, is just altering, it's a way of, another way, I guess, of altering your consciousness to get ready for ritual, to be in that kind of mindset. So it's just a way of kind of enhancing that a little bit further. Some people take an entirely different approach where they'll actually legally adopt their magical names. So, like, he gives the example, Sally Thompson becomes Amber, or Frank Jones becomes Grey Wolf. And the name can even appear on, like, driver's license, leases, other, you know, important legal documents. He goes on to say that the legal avenue is inadvisable unless you're completely open about your religion, because these names that we take on, because they are so unique and different, it causes a lot of attention to be drawn to you when you go by that. And if you don't want that kind of attention, you probably shouldn't make it your legal name. But for a lot of people, myself included in this, we choose to use our magical name to make a statement regarding our religion. So for me, I tend to use my magical name in public, not as a legal name, because it's not on any of my, like, important documents. It's not on my driver's license. It's not on my mortgage statements. It's not on any of that stuff. I haven't adopted it in the legal sense, but I do use it in a public forum, and it's because I am making a statement that I am at least that much open about my spirituality. However, it is not necessary. You don't have to do that. If you want to keep it to yourself, between you and your god or your goddess, if you only want to use it in circle, if you don't want to have one at all, totally up to you. It's totally and completely up to you. So, it's just kind of giving a reason why some people use them as their public names, as opposed to keeping them only in circle. So then he goes on to discuss how you find your magical name. And he gives a couple examples. A lot of Wiccans and pagans will adopt the name of a god or goddess in honor of them. Others look to their family cultural history and choose names from the associated folklore. So like a person from British ancestry might adopt a name from, you know, British folklore. He says that a lot of American Wiccans incorporate an animal in their name, or a flower, or a plant. Those are all kind of possibilities. Also, he says that you can just make up a name, and usually when you do this, it's kind of a descriptive name. Like, what are some of the examples he gives in here? Well, he gives Howling Wolf and Sweeping Eagle and Oak Keeper and, you know, those kinds of things. Just descriptive names that incorporate things that maybe you are drawn to in your practice. Like for me, Moonstone. I use Moonstone as the second part of my name because Moonstone is a stone that I am extremely drawn to. It is something that I am very, like, if I have a choice, I'm always going to pick Moonstone. So yeah. So he goes on to say that, like, other popular names include, like, Morgan, Morgana, Morgaine, Lugh, Arthur, which are all of the Celtic mythology, Diana, Hermes, Poseidon, Cassandra, Triton, Greek and Roman mythology. There's a lot of Egyptian names that are used. So there are lots of possibilities when choosing and deciding what your ritual name will be. But he goes on, and I think this is really good advice. If you are going to have a magical name, it's good to use it always, like when you're doing magical workings. He says, always use it in prayer, use it in rituals, write it in runes or English on your tools. And he even gives kind of an idea of performing some, like a sort of name adoption ritual, which could consist of just casting a circle, calling upon your god and goddess to kind of recognize you by that name. Very simple. And he says, finally, the use of a craft name may not give you any additional power, but it's a traditional practice and many enjoy doing it. And that's how I feel about it. I like having a magical name because it does separate my somewhat magical life from my somewhat mundane life, even though I kind of like to incorporate the two because it's a balance for me. But it does definitely help when I'm trying to get into that ritual mindset. And it's just a way of kind of distinguishing yourself with your god and goddess, with your, your deities, with your spiritual guides or anything like that. It's just a way of kind of individualizing yourself aside from the mundane. So that's kind of my view on magical names and why we have them. Again, it is absolutely unnecessary. You don't have to have one. You absolutely do not have to have one. But for someone like myself, where focus is a big thing for me, I think that it does help kind of bring in the magical energies when I'm looking to work in a ritual or doing spell work or, wanting to communicate with my deities or my spirit guides or whatever. It does help kind of focus in and kind of hone in that spiritual kind of magical energy that I'm looking for when I'm doing those things. So yeah, that's my video on magical names and why we have them. I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have an awesome weekend. We have some kind of cool stuff happening next week, and you'll hear more about that in the days coming. So keep watching, keep subscribing, keep liking, commenting, whatever you feel like doing, and we will talk to you next week. Many blessings. Bye, guys.